This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, well, welcome everybody. This is the Utility Committee meeting with the City of Lake Stevens Sewer District. We have two members from the district here today as far as, elected. So myself, Dan Lorenzen, and Commissioner Wright. Commissioner Koshi is absent because he has a previous engagement he has to attend to. We have the general manager, the assistant general manager, and then we also have folks from the city side, but I will turn it over to the city side. They can make the introductions and then we can meetings this afternoon.
Marcus.
Marcus was on here.
Appreciate the introduction. So with that, we have Bart Stevens, Mayor Gailey, Gene Brazel, myself, Gary Petersagan, and that's it, representing the city. Marcus has been excused for this meeting. So with that, that suffices for his roll call. Public forum. I don't see any different names up there. Obviously, nobody in the audience, so we'll skip that. Project review. We have down here potential consolidation process update, but how about if we start out with the Public Works facilities update? Since I do believe we did get a survey back and we're
Aaron is trying to log on right now, that's who I was just talking to. I could do a brief update, is that we have ordered the survey to have the property corners restaked. It was surveyed a couple of years ago. So that will be restaked. We walked the facility today, the mayor included, and looked at the overall site. Aaron briefed us on the discussions that he and Mariah had on office space. We think it's very doable there. We would really like to partner with the district if at all possible to extend the sewer. Not sure what the grades look like, but we're really open to that concept. It's a benefit to everybody. And if we could put up a new building down there, that would be ideal on the south end once the new sewer is installed and the septic is decommissioned and the like. As we talked today, it'd probably be a good walkthrough to look at the operations of the district and the city and figure out, okay, we have X amount of space existing. What would make the most sense? Maybe you guys have a mechanic on staff and we need more mechanic space next to what we already have, so we can relocate like the sign shop and the storage into the new building. Or maybe it makes sense just to use the new building as all new operations and reconfigure. But point is that we'd entertain more discussion on it if we get to the planning side of things. That'd be beneficial to everybody.
we have hopefully some new information regarding this potential for sewer service in that area. So hopefully Jonathan can update us on that.
Yeah. So you want to go? Please. Mariah pulled an excerpt or the cost from our comprehensive plan, and essentially we estimated that the cost per linear foot of sewer would be about $730 a linear foot. Just talked with our engineer to see what they're actually seeing bids come back in on other public works projects, and it's about 10% higher than that. So we're looking at about $800 a linear foot. That includes restoration, and then design and construction management. If we go that route, it's about another 30% on top of that project cost, or the linear foot cost. So yeah, but I do think it is feasible and essentially possible to be able to connect to the Centennial, the manhole that Centennial Short Flat would be putting.
So we've got about, I think you've mentioned about 500, 600 feet to go.
About 580 feet, linear feet to get that.
So yeah.
So we're $1,100 a foot. So who's good at math here?
I think just the pipe alone was about 624.
Did you guys shot elevations, inverted elevations off of 20th or anything? Just out of curiosity.
No, just going off the topos that Centennial put out when, with their sewer plans.
Do you think it's close to hitting elevation at the public works site or?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
I think we've got room. I think Old Hartford Road's kind of the cutoff where we wouldn't be able to get enough depth at the top of the system. So,
So we could potentially do a recovery contract on all of that then too, pick up maybe some.
yeah, I think there were about 10 lots worth of latecomer that could pay into it.
So generally, what's the total cost on that?
I think we're looking. Sorry. I didn't
No,
have
it's
time
okay,
to
I'm
use
just
my
curious if
computer.
anyone had like,
Yeah,
So the 580 feet portion, if we go with the about $800 a linear per foot, less than 10% design idea, you're looking at about 510,000
Total.
Yep.
Does that,
to get the 580.
does that get us to Old Hartford Road or just to the entrance of the Public Works building?
Just to the entrance.
It gets just the entrance.
yeah. I think the overall, as far as we could go with that gravity line, was about 1,200 linear foot,
1,400.
1,400 linear foot. So that'd be a long way to go.
So it's 1,400 to Old Hartford Road?
So maybe that's a phase two.
Yeah.
Because if we're total, we were talking yesterday about 200 a piece, now we're talking about 250 a piece.
But it's still, I think, within the planning aspect, we, you know, I mean, this is a great project to take a look at, like we were talking yesterday when it comes to PUD is not going to be there for any of us, as far as us leasing it, because we're a month to month, and we eventually have to look at something. If we can do a partner project like we've done in the past with DCAT, in something that's aspect, it just, I think it's better served, especially if you have the capacity within the existing, at least some of the existing footprint you already have to do some things in the future. It gives us an opportunity as both organizations, because, you know, otherwise the district is obviously looking, and I think you and I've had discussions before, why would we as a government want to take up prime real estate somewhere that could be best utilized in a commercial that is actually going to pay taxes to the city and the district versus us just taking up a great deal of space, and, you know, we're not paying taxes on ourselves, and so, because we're very limited, as we all know, on our footprint, what's left in buildable land, so.
can I ask a dumb question? So is there any extra space on that land? Like if you wanted to expand it, you know what I'm saying? Are there neighbors on both sides? Pretty close?
I think that lot is fully utilized right now with the existing septic tank. So connecting it to sewer would free up, be able to allow the city to use the entire lot.
Okay,
So, right, so on the south side of where we currently park,
yeah.
that's what we're talking about, being able to put in more space.
Mhm.
If you go to the west, you run into a creek. Go to the east, you're on the road, and then the only place that you could expand is if Rockworks,
Yeah,
the folks right behind us, is if they wanted to move somewhere, we could expand into that space.
Okay,
But yeah, the constraint right now is the sewer portion to be able to fully utilize that lot.
and it was something we had some discussions, just trying to take a look at, you know, what equipment has to be, you know, you don't want to keep obviously a Vector truck out in the middle of the winter, because everything that can freeze and break on wood. City, you know, you have equipment that has to be in there. It's a good size. When I was with the city, we had a good section of it that we utilized to store our vessels. We actually had a lot of this sweepers in there. We put evidence stuff in there. And so there was a lot of space, and that was before Hydros Unlimited, which took up another section, finally vacated where they used to be located. So it's a pretty good size, but of course the city's grown and the equipment needs that they probably picked up over the years. But I think there's some things that you look at, I just compare when I look at Cathcart, which Snohomish County has up there off the highway 9 on the hill in Clearview. They've built a lot of lean-tos out on their property where they've got fuel pumps, but they also, that's where they keep outdoor equipment like their sanding equipment and some of those things that can, it's out of the weather because it does have a roof over, but it's not completely inside a heated space that you would need to keep something problematic and freeze if we left it out, so.
So I mean, this probably goes without saying, you're not even buying a piece of property for $500,000. So 300 grand for sewer is a bargain. Do we need to pass some sort of resolution or agreement or something to say that we're going to jointly move forward with this to kind of memorialize this, or what do we thinking we need to do?
So currently it's in the CIP in the draft comp plan for 2025. In order to move the project when it's over 500,000, we do need the agreement of the utility committee if we're going to move that sooner. So whether we discuss that further before making that sort of motion or not, it's up to you guys, so that's what we would do.
Is that 500,000 per year cost or $500,000 for the project?
It's based on project. So right now, the whole 1,400 linear feet project is a single project over a contract.
Then what's our timeline to get in on the contractor that's gonna be doing the first section? What's their timeline?
I don't know if we'll be able to, I don't think we'll be able to piggyback on their contract because of prevailing wage laws and stuff. So it would probably be wait until they're done and then do our own. Yeah. If there were enough GFC credits for the project, we could look at that, but there's, I think, 12 ERUs for that project, so there won't be even close to enough to cover the cost.
But it might be good to put it out to bid, as that person would already be on scene and be able to cut some costs without having to
Mow in.
in.
Yeah, and I think pretty simple project design probably wouldn't take more than 60 or 90 days, but getting it out to bid, I guess it would kind of put us in the better part of the year to get more bids. Yeah.
How would you guys handle, or do you propose handling those 3 parcels to the south of the city lot that are on septic? Do you allow a single connection, or would you have to do multiple connections where they've got to get some sort of utilities from each other?
Yeah, that's one option. Our current code only allows 4 connections per 6-inch stub. So it would either be a developer extension agreement where they extend the 8-inch main to their parcel, or we can try to add that to the scope as well.
Do those folks know this is coming up?
I don't think they do. I think this is moving faster than,
Yeah.
because I think it was conversation you and I really kind of had about it, but I know that our staff had been talking, just looking at the facility itself, and they were working on, they didn't know where the footprint for the septic was complete. And then I think as that started, because I heard a little of the background, and I'm sure that Gary heard a little of the background, we just started saying, why can't we? And they must have been able to remind me, because when I walked in, I didn't really have to say anything to the staff. So they're like, yeah, we've already been thinking of this. So,
So is there a policy timeline that prospective sewer customers need to know this stuff prior to being hit with it?
It would usually come from the land use action associated with the permit, so it would get posted with the major disturbance permit issuance.
Okay.
But the comprehensive plan hasn't been approved yet. We're just getting ready to send out SEPA, so it's nothing in the comp plan has been approved by any of the by the city or the board of commissioners or ecology or any of the regulatory stuff. So we aren't proposing any changes to the CIP that's in our comp plan. But yeah, it has not been approved yet.
Mayor, also, the homeowners wouldn't be required to hook up until their septic fails.
Mhm.
So they won't be hit with a GFC right away until it becomes necessary for them to connect. They do have to.
Wouldn't that be problematic for our project then? If we have to wait for them to fail?
It has nothing really to do with our project moving forward. It has to do when you get to recoup the funds.
Yeah.
So
If they ever decide to
waiting
hook
until whenever they're.
They just put a stub to their property and call it good.
Yeah. No, what I'm saying is if our building project, because they're still using that as drain field, we couldn't do that until they were off, right?
Do they have drain field easements on your?
There's nothing, and my hope is that their septic is towards the west in the 200-foot buffer that we can't touch anyways. And if that's the case, then we're golden. If it's right where ours is on the south side, then it would be necessary. That's why I asked the question, because if we need to deal with it, then maybe it makes sense to do a utility easement down the property line.
Mhm.
We give a couple feet, they give a couple feet, we pull all those trees, run it in there right then, and then they can tie in, right?
Yeah.
We would probably have to pay that because we're putting them out. But that's a small cost for the whole system. So that's why I asked the question.
Yeah.
What you guys allow.
Yeah, it's for single family residence connections to a 6-inch stub.
So probably 6-inch run down the property line.
Mhm.
Pick up the 3, put it clean out.
Yeah, if elevations will go, or they can even do ejector pump systems or grinder pump systems to get it up to a gravity line.
It's not insurmountable.
Yeah,
So these are the folks that potentially have the drain field on the city property. But I thought we completed a survey. You said the survey stakes were going in for corners. So obviously the survey had to be completed in order to get to that point. So do we not know whether the septic system is on our property or not?
I've pulled the county records and there is none.
no
There's
easements.
there's no as-bills for any of the properties, including the cities. And the notes in the county records from the recent septic pumping is that they tried to find the drain fields and had no luck. So they found the tanks, they pumped the 2-3 bays of the tanks, and they hit the road and wrote a note in there. And so, you could run what do they call that? A locator down the pipe and try and find where the drain field is. There's no way of knowing. So that when we were there today, I was hoping that if it's in the south end, southwest side, it's in the 200-foot buffer that we can't get in anyways, so we wouldn't be disturbing them. But there's no way of knowing until we get in there and do some research.
That first scoop of dirt, we'll find out.
Well, then you immediately have to do something about it.
And we'll plan for it either way. We know they're going to connect eventually. So if it's an easement down the property line, that's what we work out right out the gate. We've got an offset of 5 feet or something, isn't it, Aaron, for the building in the commercial zone. So we would need to set the building back anyways, do landscape buffer, all that stuff. So we could just
There'll be
put
some
an utility easement.
Yeah.
The reason for me asking was you said we have to pay for that. If they have their drain field on their property, there's no reason why we have to pay for a connection fee for those folks.
Yeah.
I mean, they're encroaching illegally onto city property, so for their own benefit. So why would we pay for a utility connection fee?
There could be an implied easement, a lot of avenues that could go down.
There, can I jump in? I'm sorry I don't know how long you can hear me. We do have a survey. There was a survey done a few years ago. The stakes have disappeared. We are going to restake the corners. There are substantial easements for drain fields on the property. And so I do think that if you're going to build a building in the southeast corner, we're going to have one of those property owners connect to the public sewer system and abandon their drain field. And I'm looking for that survey document right now. I bet I will. I have a feeling I'll find it in 5 minutes for what it's worth.
The drain field is on the city property.
It is. There are 3 of them. There are 3 easements across the city property for the 3 homes to the south.
Where did you find those, Aaron, just out of curiosity?
It came up when we did the survey.
Ah, okay.
Surveyors found them. So give me a few minutes, I'll find it, and maybe I can share my screen.
Aaron, can you pull a map up and just so that you can understand what we're looking at?
All the easy stuff's already shown.
But even if there are drain fields there, I mean, it's still, you know, the public benefit as the organizations would get are still
So bottom line is we need to add it to the CIP, and that's a motion out of today that we can do.
Yeah.
We have a name for this project, so we can.
can we do that with not all members present?
You have a quorum,
Yeah.
2 and 2. And so
Yeah.
It is actionable. The project name is E5B.
E5B.
And that's that 500 feet.
So it'll be
Well,
the,
the total project, that's what's identified in
The comprehensive.
so that'll be the full 1,400 feet. But if the utility committee decides and the district agrees to split that into another project, we can create a E5B or C, C or D if we don't have a
E5B plus.
yeah, D-A.
In 20 years from now, so he's gonna go, what in the world were they gonna be?
These- the map on here.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got Sharon.
Okay, on my computer, I'm reaching the end of my processing power when I try to bring it up in GIS. So we're just going to use Google Maps. It's these 3 parcels.
You want to hit your satellite layer?
Yeah, let me bring it up. It's these 3 residential structures that have drain field easements that extend. This one in particular, I know extends this direction. So give me a few minutes. I know this one as well has quite an easement. Now, the question I would have is, where is the actual drain field constructed? And I think that goes back to what you brought up, Gene. Is the easement area may not match the drain field, the actual extent of the drain field. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So give me a few minutes and let me find our survey, and I think that'll help our discussion.
There's enough room on that property for all your equipment and all our equipment. That does not seem that big.
Well, it doesn't show the entire parcel.
And so where we currently have equipment, we have room. Those buildings are really big.
They're good size.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, those buildings are really good size. For example, on half of the dark roof side,
Yeah,
I mean, you can fit 2 Vector trucks plus in there.
okay,
So we have already quite a bit of room,
okay.
but I think if we tried to stuff you guys into what we currently have, we would be too much.
And there's enough parking for employees and
That's the other
stuff?
thing we have to add on.
I think that parcel actually comes down to like right about here. So there's a lot more to the parcel than just what's paid.
Okay,
And one of the thoughts we had this morning was we actually have a lot about where that red dot is. Yeah, and one of our thoughts there is we park
you have
parking lot.
you have a lot there, so you said? Okay,
We do a parking lot there for off-site employee parking so that we don't have a mixture
yeah,
of civilian vehicles with our city vehicles.
I think that, yeah, there's a lot of possibilities, especially when you start, like, if if we look at the, where, I mean, obviously the septic's going to be there, but if that comes out, and then even taking it right up to the line with the property line and the easement in there, I mean, there could be things done if government is responsible for those connection fees, then obviously we're gonna wanna have to move everything as close to the edge, and that's just gonna be written into the proposals. I mean, because really what's gonna happen is those three places are gonna get at least a $13,000 GFC connection each on top of all the other side work that has to be done. But that could be a real, I mean, yeah, we're talking public dollars, but it's less expensive than not being able to do something.
Okay.
So we just have to explore.
So between Rockworks and Hartford, the only thing left is that storage, right?
Yeah.
Although it gets it closer to Hartford in the sense of the lift station, proximity and so forth. So the revisioning of Hartford gets closer.
Yeah. And when we think of this project, do we also think of putting in broadband and everything else in that trench line?
Well, I think we're gonna have to make sure that we have connectivity. I mean, one of our biggest problems we have right now is we have that place over there, QD, and they want $10,000 to $20,000 to get anything there. So we're using hotspots, which is not the ideal way to have connectivity. So I think, that's just something looking at it. If we, this will be a long-term facility for the city that's, once the hole is open, let's just dump all the utilities we can get into it,
And really, it's an opportunity to get Comcast and Ziply to put their own stuff.
Do you guys allow conduit in the trench?
There has to be some lateral separation, but yeah, if it's a 4-foot trench. In right of way, there's no exclusive easement or anything, just the required statutory separation between water and sewer.
That's 10 feet.
Exactly.
So now we were talking about rebuilding the entire road.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully the plus would be we could get some of them right down that side of the east. Because I don't know if you guys in the future plan, because there is kind of a little hump going over that, if there is going to be some sort of, as roadways get built, if they, take the hills out of it. If not,
I guess the goal is to get a sewer line in, right?
Yeah, the goal sewer line, anything above that be
Yeah.
just whipped cream on your Starbucks drink,
They
okay?
can for micro trench.
And we could micro trench it. Ziply's working on doing some micro trenching too.
I mean, I guess I would say let's concentrate on the sewer line.
Yeah.
Solve that problem. There's just throwing all this other stuff in there. It's, project, reclaiming of grades. It's like
Okay, so
the ideal to do it, but at
Yeah.
the same time, we're trying to be
Well,
cost efficient there.
yes.
I would make a motion then that we add project E5B to the
Second that.
So we have a motion made to add E5B to the, I didn't hear what,
CIP.
CIP for the sewer district.
CIP.
Do you want to clarify that?
I would make a motion that we add project E5B to the sewer district CIP.
No,
Seconder, agree with that?
Yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 4-0.
I think it gives now the staff the ability to start looking and doing some due diligence.
Yeah.
So those are your drain fields, Aaron?
Yes. So lot 1 has an easement. It's quite extensive.
Wow.
Lot 2, their easement, it comes to nearly the front of the building as it is. And then lot 3 is over here. I think each one would need to tie into public sewer for this to work out.
Yeah.
At least 2 of the 3.
that would be something that I would definitely say, because then that way you can move the building to the very 5 foot mark of the property.
Right. And one thing I want to point out is, like you mentioned, it certainly didn't look like, based on the satellite view, that the city owns a lot of property here. But you can see here we actually own the access road, though there is an ingress and egress easement. It does extend quite a ways south. So the thought that Mariah and I were talking, and Jonathan was this area would be useful for them potentially. Is that what you were thinking, Mariah?
That's correct.
Okay.
Can you send those over to Greg and have him read those easements for us and make sure that we can get out of them?
Absolutely. I'll do that. Any questions? Any other questions?
No.
Okay.
I think just, staff wise, then when they're gonna have to do all the heavy lifting too. Part of it's gonna be interesting to see when this other project, because weren't they supposed to break ground this last month, but due to supply chain issues and everything else, the later they get it, if they don't get it this year, they're gonna be in the boat next year. Which might work in our favor because we might be to get something.
Okay, good. So we got direction on that. So let's, any other questions, comments regarding that topic? We kind of further expand upon this potential consolidation process update. We had a meeting a week ago Tuesday with the bond folks. And I'm just trying to think back as to what we've done since our last utility meeting. Who else did we meet?
Well, we met with Paul. Did we tell them that
Did we update on that?
did we update everybody up on that? The Ronald wastewater shoreline, merger that they had years ago. If we didn't, it's worth bringing up. So we did meet with, Paul, I can't remember.
Conrad.
Yeah, I don't want to butcher his last name because I know it started with a K, but so we met with him, he was involved and knew a lot of the players during the process of Ronald wastewater and shoreline eventually coming together. And there was a lot of conflict between the two organizations over the time. Really, the best message that he got out of this whole thing was it's not a good view when governments sue each other. And if you can avoid doing that, do that. Avoid litigating each other. And I think he pretty much looked to us kind of like, hey, good job that we're having these conversations and really not expending money just to extend it on each side. But he gave some good insight on some of this stuff. And, really it's about us just trying to come together and understand, because I think that as we've all, unfortunately, kind of over the years have just kind of got a lot of water flowing, we forget that eventually this is going to occur. And then rather than waiting till the last hour of the last day and the light switch comes on and nobody's had a conversation, that's going to be problematic and nothing but chaos. So he was really, I think, that, hey, at least you guys are talking. That's a good step forward. Avoid litigation if that's the case, because we kind of brought up our 3 overarching goals and kind of let them know, which were, employees, everybody moves over. We've got to get the timeline and to avoid litigation. And those are, it's a great way, because really it says like the other ones that benefit from this are legal, because it's billable hours for them. They'll do whatever you need them to do, but that's not serving the best interests of the public. So I think, he gave us some insight, and it was more, he knew a lot of players within this area over the years, because he did do some land development in the years. So he did like the covered bridge downtown with his group of folks that he worked with at the time. So, he knew Darwin and the previous players and everything like that. So very well versed in the different areas that he was at. Now, he wasn't an elected official, so he didn't have to go into, but he did understand enough that like it's never a good thing if government's going to sit there and sue each other. I think you and I both said,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's, the litigation is not an option. And a lot of us kind of cheered us, I guess, for going this route. So kind of moral support.
right.
We did exercise that meeting with him.
Mhm.
And then this, a week ago Tuesday, we met with the bond folks as well as their legal, I don't, you weren't on that. Okay. We had Mariah, Brett was there, Keen, Barb.
Michelle, I was,
Okay, Michelle, Dan and myself. And I think that what kind of came out of that meeting is just, we need to be very transparent as to what's going on and disclose everything as to how we're doing it and getting our accounting system in order. So I wouldn't say it was simple. I mean, there's a lot to it, but that was kind of the overlying theme is not a problem. Just make sure you do your work. So,
Do your due diligence, but there was nothing that really could be a deal breaker in the aspect of looking. I think the only thing that we look at, because we obviously were in two different systems, we're in accrual, city's cash, you look at those things and, okay, we've got to be able to one day come together. There's going to be pluses and minuses inside. I mean, my understanding in the accrual aspect, because we do that, we tend to depreciate a lot of our assets because there's a huge assets sitting down there off 204. And you want to be able to make sure that you continue there on a cash basis. There's going to be some differences that last thing we'll need is a tax bill of some sort because they say, hey, you're not depreciating your assets anymore if you're just going to do this. Because the higher ups above us are always going to want money. So everybody wants their pound of flash monetarily. So that's.
So with that, the exercise of changing the accounting system is, Barb has kind of been doing a little bit of research. Hopefully, I don't know if you have any information for us today.
I
But
have, actually. We've reached out to a couple of different entities. I know City of Ellensburg recently went from GAAP accrual to cash basis, and we reached out to them, and I think her name is Holly Conti, and she came back and she said they didn't use an outside consultant, that she actually did it. It took a little longer for her to do it as she was doing it on the side of her own normal day-to-day operations. She said inventory was definitely the biggest obstacle, looking at everything they purchased. You guys capitalize, depreciate, obviously in cash basis, it's an expense when the cash goes out the door. So it would take a hit the first year and then it would just roll in. So it would just kind of go away that first year. So, and then we asked her if there was any hiccups or anything that they uncovered, and they said no. The first year is definitely the most time consuming to actually do the conversion, but nothing really big issue. I then reached out to another finance director in another city, and she gave me contact, and I reached out to this person today too. And this, it actually ex-auditors, you find that a lot, ex-auditors that actually doing, they deal with cash basis and GAAP entities, and they deal with cities and sewer water districts and everything, and they would potentially be able to help with the conversion, and would recommend doing the conversion the last year of the sewer district, do the conversion, and then just roll the cash basis financial statements into the city. So it would be the one-time thing. It would, yes, it would look bad the last year, but everyone understand it's just a change in financial accounting system. There's no real loss out there, but so it sounds like it's doable. Matthew, my finance manager, and I kind of discussed, could we potentially do that with the district? Possibly, but with time constraints, it would probably be easier just to hire a consultant to come in, take care of it, work with us on the transition, and then move forward. So we have actually found a couple people that look like they are able to do that versus when we were discussing with Moss Adams a number of years ago. They weren't as interested in doing that. They deal more with GAAP than they do with cash basis. And so we have found, like I said, at least one entity that deals almost completely in government, all of the different entities, sizes and everything. So that's not an issue. And I know another one we actually talked about was Public Works Trust Funds. We got all the information on the bonds, nothing in the official statements that preclude the district from using cash basis. I did reach out to Public Works Board, and they said, yes, this is definitely possible. They transferred me to another person who hasn't gotten back to me with the actual step-by-step details, but they said they have done this in the past and it's not an issue. It's just paperwork usually.
So the folks you reached out to as far as the consultant, they haven't responded back to you?
No, she hasn't gotten back to me yet. I actually just got her name from another entity, another person in an entity, and I actually found her website, and it is a CPA website. They have a number of people on there. So I was like, oh, great. Most of them are ex-auditors and dealing with government. I was like, oh, great. Ex-auditor, what can we talk about here?
Did Ellensburg gal kind of give you a window since she was kind of doing it on the side, how much?
She actually, she said she worked on it most of the fall before, so it doesn't sound like it was more than probably 4 months or so. Like it didn't actually take, and she said, you know, she's got quite a bit of experience in this, and she understood since she was going from GAAP to cash and she had already been doing the GAAP for a while, she knew which accounts to convert and process. And she sent us her phone number. She's like, please feel free to contact me about the inventory. We'll walk through it with you and explain how that works. And so we've got some pretty good contacts at this point.
What we talked about yesterday was not burdening the staff with this exercise and probably looking more at a consultant type deal to facilitate this process, because I mean, you guys are busy, Michelle's busy and stuff. So I'd be anxious to hear what, you know, kind of costs, timeframes, things like that. So I would suggest rather than wait for our next utility meeting, when you get that information, maybe kind of ferret it out to us.
Okay.
Kind of discuss that issue as to how we go about taking care of it.
Yeah, because I think that was one of the things that we recognized as looking at is, because it's always been at the forefront where people were talking about, okay, we've got to even get two different accounting systems. They do eventually have to come together as one. And how do you do that to be transparent? Keep the auditors mainly, that's because none of us want to go through this with a finding, especially when you have such clean balance sheets and everything else, just because something. So, but like I said, there are depreciation tax, you know, things like that that have to be taken into account.
So as part of that discussion, is there also a need to discuss software systems? Because you guys are running on different systems than we are running. So is that a parallel discussion? Is it a wait till that's done and then work on software, or does it make sense to do it all at the same time?
So it would depend on the timing of the recommended fast forward of the assumption. I mean, if you're talking about doing that sooner, our system we've had for more than a decade now, and we would potentially be looking to go out to RFP bid on new software in the future anyway. And I know Cassell is one of the ones that we've actually looked into previously. It would definitely be easier to move the city into their software system, because moving a lot of utilities, moving every single account is time consuming. Is it possible? Yes. Springbrook has a good utility billing software. We don't have it, obviously, but I think that's one of the things we've kind of talked about is the options are we move into theirs, they move into ours, or we go out for a complete bid and then see where we land.
Yeah, so I think that's a discussion we need to take up, but it is a discussion that needs to happen at the same time that we're moving from removing systems, moving counting systems.
I'm not 100% sure we would need to. I mean, if the sewer district is transitioning from GAAP to cash, Cassell does both. Springbrook does both. So I think it's a separate topic, but it's definitely one of the ones we want to consider currently.
Yeah, especially when the switch over, because you're going to get staff from this side coming into that and want to understand. I mean, it would be nice to be able to have a full understanding of it before that switch, because that would avoid one half or the other going into complete shock of what's going on, you know.
And there may be some integration costs associated with that to get workflows matching.
But it was definitely, I think, what you and I were speaking of before. You know, the exercise is not to put the burden on the staff that already have busy jobs. It's to take a look at like, okay, how do we, without spending lots and lots and lots and lots of money on consultants just to make this go on. What can we do to get somebody to kind of help fill in some stuff? I mean, obviously, each side's gonna have personnel that are going to have to be aware because you just don't show up, hey, here you go. I mean, they're gonna wanna know some processes at that point, but I think if you can get the heavy lifting of having this third-party consultant, I think those costs, we have to take a look at how we're gonna absorb and work between the two to make that, so.
Okay, good.
And I'm sorry, the first year hit, you had mentioned, that was basically, would the hit only be to the reported earnings at the end of the year?
It should be just the report earning, yes.
And again, just full disclosure of that issue doesn't affect anything when we were talking about the bonding. Folks, it's, as long as you're transparent, disclose that, why you're doing it, those are the issues that mitigate that situation, so.
And the thing that we kind of looked at when we had a talk was to be able to show a full transparency, just so it's easier. It's not to do this stuff in mid-year, not decide, hey, guess what, September's perfect. Where you're gonna have, it would be like, hey, how about we make this thing click at a January, whatever, it comes into that. Because I think that if that's just respectful of each side, because I know on the city side, like the district side, the year end, you're trying to get things done, and the last thing you need is this other round of stuff put there, trying to figure it out. And I think the auditor will probably appreciate it too, when they come in, because they can look at a full year of clean transparency you've moved over versus like, what did you do in November? That, yeah.
Right, I would say that's probably the biggest task that we have in front of us.
I think that is one of the, the financial piece is a huge one. It has to be.
Yeah.
It has to be tackled. I mean, absolutely.
But with that exercise taking place, once that's done, things should kind of fall into place as to timeframes. So I'm just kind of thinking calendar wise and so forth. I mean, if we were to start this, kind of say January 1 of 23 is our start date. What exactly did Ellensburg transfer? A sewer system to their city?
They were gap basis,
So
so
just the
their
accounting.
entire finance, they flipped their
Okay,
their
they
accounting.
didn't assume anything.
No.
Or
They already had sewer and everything else.
it's just a matter of change.
What do we do this? Why don't Barb and Mariah and everyone from your finance side talk that through, see what works for you guys, and come back to us on stuff.
Yeah. Well, then hopefully you'd have some costs
Mhm.
for 2005 too.
Get some estimates on how long it will take and
Because you were, I mean, we were just kind of ballparking things somewhere 6 to 12 months.
Yeah, we didn't know. We just heard over the years, it could be 18 months to 24, you just don't know. And if you leave it to an elected, it'll get even worse sometimes. So it's better to have the professional.
at least they know.
But yeah, let's see what those consultants say, and it's however long it is, figure it out.
Do we want to, on this kind of same overarching issue, do we want to discuss anything else in regards to this as far as, I mean, we've kind of talked about, our laboratory analysis person and IT and things of that sort. You guys are kind of doing that already as far as the discussions, so. I guess I would just say, we're looking at go.
How about the operations side, John? Like, what do you, like the software side of your running work orders and stuff? Who do you do that with?
Timmons Group, we have a maintenance contract, so they handle the back end reporting stuff. But for the most part, it's Angeline, Kyle, and myself that are the administrators. We do all the city works or the asset
City works,
management.
right? That's what I thought it was. And then we've just created a new contract with ViewWorks. So that's another area we'd want to look at as the software side is do we, what do we do with that?
And I think when the city was originally looking a few years back, I had sat in on a couple meetings with ViewWorks, and I think the reason we didn't go with ViewWorks was they didn't have an integration module for a CCTV truck. So we'd have to have a separate system for all the CCTV data. And CityWorks had that built into their program, and that's why we ultimately went with them.
Do you know if that's changed with ViewWorks?
I don't know.
Because we were looking at CityWorks, it's gonna be $1 million contract.
Yeah.
And versus a restart with ViewWorks at like 100,000. Not the smartest tool in the table.
Yep, and there's other ways to archive that TV data, but it would be tougher to make it available through the asset management program, but it's not an insurmountable task.
Yeah. How much longer is your contract with CityWorks?
It's a year by year. We do an annual.
Okay. So that's something we can look at on the operations side.
And then that comes into, like I said, when we're talking about IT, looking at software management, somebody to do some of that stuff, because right now we share it among staff, and I know you guys are in the process of, getting IT to manage, because in Snohomish County, who we have our primary service through, that we're very happy to say, hey, we'll do everything but manage your software, because they're just not in that business. They've got enough of their own. They don't need to take on other part, but that's where I think looking at the IT professionals you guys end up hiring, is there somebody that can help manage these things? Because, software management is going to be a big thing. So.
The county does host most of our applications. They won't, if we have a problem with the application, it's basically up to us and the vendor to handle. So they'll host it, they'll spin up servers, but yeah, they won't do anything on the back end other than put it in place. They do backups of it and stuff. They have it in 3 separate locations in case a server goes down, they can flip a switch and you can operate off another server immediately. But yeah, the software support, they host it, but you're on your own. It's unmaintained.
Anything else in regards to that consolidation process?
No, I think that's pretty much where we're at. We were gonna meet with, what we were talking today, of just meeting, probably looking at. Yeah. It's just, it's always good to bring them in on the process.
Then after that, I don't know who else we can talk to.
Yeah.
Other than facilitators that actually make it happen.
Yeah. Well, we did talk, and as you start to get into some of the levels, some of the things we also had discussion about, we're going to be able to, we have to get, when we spoke with Chief O'Brien with Surfer, Snohomish Regional Fire and Rescue before, he talked about the merger between Seven and Blake Stevens at that time. And they did bring people together as far as on both sides of the working aspect to come up with cultural committees to kind of, because you're merging 2 different cultures, even though we're one community, you still have different operations and you want people to feel comfortable in how it's going to integrate. Because, there are things that we looked at, 99% of the staff who work for the district are represented. It's, I think we have 3 people that are unrepresented in that essence. So that's not always the same on the city side. So you're going to have to, integration has to come in there, involving union folks to be able to have a seat at the table to have some conversation too. Is an important part. And that's what Chief O'Brien talked about too. So, there's a lot of little things. It may be not at the level where the electeds get involved, but it has to be something that's got to come down there, because I think in the end, like I've told a lot of folks, the only 3 people leaving the organization when this comes together are the 3 electeds on the wall. We get, we're going to, well, I'm going to go to Starbucks. I don't know if you're going to. But it's just one of those things that happens in that way. But we're here for the ride to make sure that, that we want an integration that's going to work for everybody. The reality is, we know this is a date that has been put out there. The unification agreement says that we want it to be a smooth transition.
Okay, on to development review. Do we have anything to talk about?
There's nothing to talk about. I didn't even include the spreadsheet, 'cause it's exactly the same as the last utility meeting. We haven't received any new developer extension agreements.
So things are
that
kind
have
of
been-
quiet for you.
Things are very quiet.
Scary.
Yeah, because how many connections? We were at 40,
We're at 49.
and we were way over 200 at this time last year.
Yeah, I think we're over three, or right at about 300.
Are we seeing any new development coming in the city side?
I think we've had a few pre-application meetings, but they're still pretty early. And I think one thing that we're kind of seeing is projects stalling out once they actually go out to bid.
Yeah.
Right now with the labor and material costs.
Action items, approval of meeting minutes, June 22nd. We have a motion to approve for any corrections, comments.
I'll second that.
And a motion to approve a second. All those in favor of the approving the utility committee meeting minutes from June 22nd, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes. Next meeting, August. Seems like we'll have some meat on the table.
August 24th, I think is what we have it down for. Wednesday, yeah.
4 o'clock again.
Yeah.
Same place.
Same bat time, same bat channel. Yep.
Any other items we need to talk about? Aqua Fest this weekend.
You'll walk with us in the parade.
We have the master of ceremony. He's covering the bases for us.
It was made the grand marshal on. Default, they're like, hey, we're pressing. Oh, the grand marshal.
Don't make it sound so quiet.
Yeah, no, it'll be great. I got a little speech.
Okay. Motion to adjourn.
Motion adjourned.
Second.
We are adjourned.
And so the board of commissioners are back in. I'd make a motion to adjourn. All in favor? Thank you, everyone.
See you next month.
Yeah. Yeah.